Thanks for contributing to this Reflected Best Self exercise as part of my master's program. I promised everyone that contributed that I'd get back to you in terms of the results and what came out of it, so here I am with a brief explanation. This was the Best Self exercise looking at how I perform or what characteristics stand out when I'm at my very, very best. So what did I look at? Initially I took a lot of the input and tried to collate it all and use these fantastic word clouds to see if anything stood out, computer generated algorithms. This was using all of the Danish text put together. This was looking at some of the keywords in Danish, and this was doing a similar thing with the English stories that I collected. I have to say not a huge amount came out of this exercise, but it does look very, very nice. So, what else did I do? I then tried to arrange all of the stories I collected on a timeline. We can see from 1994 here, the earliest story, up to 2012. I've arranged them here with the private stories, or the stories from my private life, being blue crosses, work-related being red dots, and the green crosses are from voluntary or charity-based work. As you can see, there's a lot more stories here in the more recent years. That's maybe to be expected, with the work-related stories starting from about 98. Again, yeah, that's maybe to be expected in terms of not having too many full-time jobs before then. But there's a fairly even spread across the years, actually, apart from the glut of stories here in the last couple of years. So I also looked at the where the stories came from and what they were about. And I classed the people that sent stories to me according to whether they were family members, friends, work-related contacts, or people I considered both friends and work-related contacts. And then I looked at whether the stories they wrote about me were from my private life, from the voluntary work that I do, or from business or work. And here we can actually see, if you can make any sense of this, there's a relatively separated picture. I was expecting there to be lots of crisscrossing and crossovers, but we can see that my family generally have told stories about my private life, that my friends generally have told stories about my private life, and that my business work contacts generally have told stories about my business and work life. It's this group here, the people that I consider both friends and business contacts. They have mixed it up a little bit more, and here we can see that group. So these are the group of people that are both friends and business contacts, and there's a relatively even spread between private life stories, charitable work or voluntary work, and business. So a relative compartmentalization there, I would say. I then looked at the who was present at the stories, and this is the first thing that really started to grab my attention. 13 of the 38, there were 38 stories in total, 13 of them were about me on my own, people observing me doing something on my own, engaged in something on my own. 13 of the 38. 21 of the 38 stories were about me with a group of people. So me working across from a group of people I was teaching or leading or something like that. But me in a group context, in a group dynamics context. Only 4 of the 38 stories were about me together with one other person. Just 4 out of the 38 stories. Now, I'm not sure entirely what to conclude from that, but I did think that was quite an interesting little piece of data to come out of this. Then I moved on to looking at the thematic analysis of the stories, and this is where I think it really began to get interesting. These pictures, they're not meant to be representations of clowns or Edvard Munch type scream faces, but this is a Venn diagram showing what was happening during the story. So these are the work-related stories, again with the red colour. And of the work-related stories, we can see that this is where I am directly teaching a group of people. That was what was going on in these stories here. Actually standing in a teacher role in some kind of way. These stories, this is me not teaching, but in contact with my own people, so in contact with my own staff, my freelancers, something like that, working together with them, and of course a crossover there where we're doing both at the same time. And these stories, again, the green colour, this is the voluntary or charitable work that I'm doing when they fall into that context. So we can see an overwhelming majority of these stories within the work-related realm fall into the area of the direct teaching of a group. In my private life, there was also quite an interesting thing to notice here. 5 of these stories I managed to categorize as having a theme of following my own path, going my own way, kind of pleasing myself or doing my own thing in some way or another. But equally, 5 of the stories seem to focus very much on actually the way that I engage myself with others, interaction, being at my best when I'm interacting with others. And I thought that was quite interesting, that just as many people described me being at my very best when I was pursuing my own path and kind of striking out on my own route, as those that described me as being at my very best when I was really interacting with others. And that was quite an interesting balance. There was also a group of stories down here which dealt with the period in 2010 when my late wife was dying from cancer. And these are also split between myself handling things and being at my best in that way, and then also in the way that I interacted with her during that very, very difficult period. So those were, I thought, slightly separate from the other stories, but showed somewhat a similar split to the main split there. So I took all these themes and decided to try and boil it down to something. What could I boil it down to? And I managed to identify 5 themes. And of course, what I was looking for here, I was interested in the idea of this is my best self. So I'm not just interested in everyday strengths or what sort of things are you good at, but what is it, what qualities do I display when I'm at my very, very best? That was the question I'm really interested in. And this was the first one that I could boil out of or boil down to from the input I got. I have a natural creativity, engagement and curiosity that can be felt by others when I interact with them. This is one overall kind of characteristic of me at my very best. I thought one quote out of the input that I got, which I thought summed this up and really tickled me, was the phrase, "Economics is boring, but not when you talk about it," which I think says something about a kind of catching enthusiasm and engagement for kind of anything that grabs my attention. And the phrase "almost childlike" was used by different people in connection with different stories, but I think again that taps into this kind of a feeling of energy and enthusiasm and curiosity. So that was one point. The next point, being trustworthy. I don't want to say too much about this. It wasn't one of the things that really jumped out. It was one of the lesser themes, but it was there. And not only trustworthy in terms of keeping my agreements, keeping what I promise, but also several that suggested that simply my way of communicating with people created trust, even before I'd had the chance to keep any agreements or to deliver on promises. But even before that only the way that I communicate seems to, in a sense, create a sense of trust. This was one of the really key things to come out of the exercise. I'm at my very strongest, I'm at my very best when things are going badly and when things are difficult. And I think that was quite an interesting theme. It's not something that I've particularly thought of before. Various points to back this up, again referring to the very difficult time in 2010 during my wife's illness and death. In my life's greatest crisis, that was when I showed enormous strength. But then I could also identify other stories which fitted in with this theme, that I would continue with my work even if others weren't doing theirs or doing their share, but I would kind of stoically soldier on. Not being afraid of challenges and being independent and actually quite liking things when they're a little bit tough and a little bit hard. And actually thriving in working under pressure. So I could see that that theme did stretch out a bit. Being relaxed with myself and with who I am. This was another very, very significant point. Being relaxed about myself and having a very strong sense of self, and this point of following my own path, not necessarily having to follow others all the time. And there were several stories about this, about taking decisions which consciously would take me away from my friends and family and go off on a different path to that all my friends and colleagues were pursuing, or something like that. There were several stories that fitted in with that from different periods in my life, which I could see and which made sense. And the last point, that I produce and perform my very, very best when I'm standing in front of a group and teaching. And similar to this, good at working with my team and encouraging their development and learning. There are several points backing this up, something about having high expectations and ambitions, something about making things as simple as possible, but still being able to account for complexity, still being able to deal with complexity, but actually communicating things as simply as possible. And then a whole load of comments about finding the right balance, or not necessarily balance, but taking the right decision between either giving people responsibility or taking control myself, or between giving people plenty of space or daring to go close to them and challenge them, between being relaxed and having high ambitions and serious expectations. So something about, not necessarily about balancing between the two, but understanding well when to choose the one and when to choose the other. So as I said earlier, the thing that I was really interested in was trying to separate just things that are general everyday strengths from things that are actually signifying me at my very, very best. So to try and do this, I compared the results of this reflected best self exercise with results of other strength tests that I've taken previously. This is the values in action test from Authentic Happiness, developed by positive psychologists. This is Strength Finder, which is Gallup based, another strength test. And what I tried to do was look at the themes and try and draw these dotted lines where I thought I could see connections. If I thought I could see strengths that were connected, so I could see that these, for instance, this strength of being very creative and engaged and curious, well, that connects quite well with the Strength Finder, strength of ideation, which I got out of that result, or with curiosity under the values in action and love of learning and so on. So I tried to find all the links I could, and then what I'm interested in really was the things that weren't linked, because I thought, well, these probably say a lot about my everyday strengths, the strengths that people see in me all the time, or that I see in myself all the time. What I'm interested in is what stands out from that. What are the strengths that only come out when I'm at my very best? And I think the things that really grabbed me out of this was this point here about being relaxed with who I am, about having a strong sense of self, and about, more than anything, following my own path, going my own direction. And the other point here about being at my very, very strongest when things are going badly and when things are tough. And those are maybe the 2 points that came out of this exercise more than anything, I would say. So that's a brief look over what I got out of the exercise. It just remains for me to say thank you very much for your input and helping me put all this together. I really appreciate your input, and I can certainly say that doing the exercise was a significant experience for myself, and it's something that I'm still using and referring back to, which has helped me learn about myself and the way that I lead and teach, but also helped refine my understanding of leadership in general, and I'm applying it continually on this master's course that I'm doing. So thanks very much for your input.